So Mitt Romney announced that he's going to be retiring in the sense that he's not running for re-election. He's going to serve out the rest of his term, which I believe is all the way until 2025. But he released a video about not running for re-election. And he also decided to speak to a journalist and spill all the tea about what's going on behind the scenes with the Republican Party. And let me tell you, it verifies a lot of things that we've thought for a long time about how weak and cockish a lot of these Republicans are. There's a big gap between what they say publicly and what they think privately, and we're going to go through it. So first, let's look at what Romney said in his video, which announces he's not running for re-election.
I've spent my last 25 years in public service of one kind or another. At the end of another term, I'd be in my mid-80s. Frankly, it's time for a new generation of leaders. They're the ones that need to make the decisions that will shape the world they will be living in. Now, we face critical challenges: mounting national debt, climate change, and the ambitious authoritarians of Russia and China.
The national debt thing is classic Romney. The Russia-China thing is classic Romney, but he brought up climate change, which is certainly not classic Romney. I'm actually stunned that he brought up climate change there. I don't know where this came from. To be fair, I don't know enough about his voting record to see if he's voted in alignment with the notion that he's concerned about climate change. I know that he's been a little more bipartisan than most Republicans in the sense that on some issues he'll vote with Democrats, but that color me shocked he brought up climate change here.
President Biden nor former President Trump are leading their party to confront those issues. On deficits and debt, both men refuse to address entitlements, even though they know that this represents 2/3 of federal spending.
Yeah, on this, Trump and Biden are definitely right, because they're saying don't cut entitlements. Mitt Romney saying, we absolutely have to cut entitlements. No, all you have to do to fix Social Security in the long run is lift the cap. So basically, you're not only paying Social Security tax on $150,000 or less. If you just lift that cap and make millionaires pay the same percentage rate, then it's funded as far as the eye can see. But this is his classic, like, fiscal conservatism coming out. I mean, this is Mitt Romney to a T right here.
Donald Trump calls global warming a hoax, and President Biden offers feel-good solutions that make no difference to the global climate.
Is Mitt Romney insinuating he would go further on climate legislation than Joe Biden? That is shocking. Like, I would not have guessed that in a million years.
On China, President Biden underinvests in the military, and President Trump...
Oh, please. Biden underinvests in the military?
...underinvests in our alliances. Political motivations too often impede the solutions that these challenges demand. The next generation of leaders must take America to the next stage of global leadership. While I'm not running for re-election, I'm not retiring from the fight. I'll be your United States Senator until January of 2025. I will keep working on these and other issues, and I'll advance our state's numerous priorities. I look forward to working with you and with folks across our state and nation in that endeavor. It really is a profound honor to serve Utah and the country, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so.
Somebody pointed out that, like, Dianne Feinstein is basically dead. She's like a corpse, and she's not retiring, right? Like, she's still in there. I mean, I guess she's not running for re-election either, but she's still in the seat, which is crazy. Mitch McConnell is also a corpse, and he's still in there. And here you have a guy who he's up there in age, but he actually, at least his brain functions, and he doesn't look like he's decrepit and basically disintegrating right in front of our eyes. And this is the one who's like, all right, I'm going to step aside. It's kind of crazy that that's the reality. All right, so now let's take a look at this. Romney says Republican senators literally laughed out loud at Trump behind his back. Quote, caucus burst into laughter. So I told you guys he spilled all the tea in terms of what's going on behind the scenes with the Republicans, and this does not disappoint. So the guy who talked to him is named McKay Coppins, and I think he's a writer for The Atlantic, and he spoke to Mitt Romney. He was basically like with Mitt Romney for a very extended period of time, and he got Mitt Romney to like open up with him and share what he really thinks about stuff, and Mitt Romney would, give all the dirty little gossip behind the scenes about Republicans. And so here's one of the stories that Coppins tells. It's, quote, Romney's most surprising discovery upon entering the Senate was that his disgust with Trump was not unique among his Republican colleagues. So Romney is different in the sense that he has vocalized colossal disagreements with Trump. He's been very clear about, like, I'm not with him on this. This is crazy. Whereas other Republicans either will cuck themselves to Trump and defend Trump, or the more honest among them just stay quiet, right? But behind the scenes, it's a different story. Perhaps Romney's most surprising discovery upon entering the Senate was that his disgust with Trump was not unique among his Republican colleagues. Quote, almost without exception, he told me. In other words, all of these Republican senators know he's a liar, know he's a narcissist, know he's a ridiculous person. They all know that. They all know that. They're just scared to open their mouths and dissent. Now, in Congress, I'm sure it's a little different. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene actually think Trump is like a god among men. But that's because they're stupid. Whereas a lot of these people in the Senate are more educated, more intelligent. I mean, I think they're wrong on everything policy-wise. But they can see 2 + 2 = 4 when it's put right in front of their faces, right? They shared my view of the president. In public, of course, they played their parts as Trump loyalists, often contorting themselves rhetorically to defend the president's most indefensible behavior, but in private, they ridiculed his ignorance, rolled their eyes at his antics, and made incisive observations about his warped, toddler-like psyche. Romney recalled one senior Republican senator frankly admitting, quote, he has none of the qualities you would want in a president, and all of the qualities you wouldn't. So now let's go through some of the other findings. So this is in the Daily Beast, all of the biggest revelations from Mitt Romney's new book extract. So Mitch McConnell, while he would publicly at the time cuck himself to Trump, secretly he was whispering to Mitt Romney that when the Democrats were doing one of the impeachments against Trump, McConnell whispered to Romney, like, man, they really nailed his ass, didn't they? With like a wink and a nod, like I support it. This is amazing. So Romney also apparently messaged McConnell to warn him about the January 6th attack. He said, look, I'm getting a heads up here from a Pentagon official, senior Pentagon official, that they want to target your house, Mitch. Quote, there are calls to burn down your home, Mitch, to smuggle guns into D.C., and to storm the Capitol. I hope that sufficient security plans are in place, but I'm concerned that the instigator, the president, is the one who commands the reinforcements the D.C. and Capitol Police might require. McConnell never wrote back. If Mitt Romney was aware and heard through the grapevine all of these threats about January 6th and they want to storm the Capitol and they want to overthrow the election and all that, and they still weren't prepared to handle it when it happened, that is a colossal failure of leadership. Because if Mitt Romney knew, he's not like the most informed person about national security matters in the Senate, and he knew and he was warning Mitch McConnell, and not nearly enough was done, and they were able to breach the Capitol. It's astonishing. This is one of my favorite parts here. Romney apparently despises Josh Hawley and J.D. Vance. And this is the most relatable thing ever about Mitt Romney. So they say, over his 4 years in the Senate, Romney accrued a special kind of loathing for Josh Hawley and J.D. Vance. During the Capitol riots, while huddled in the Senate chamber with his colleagues, Romney recalled whirling on Hawley to yell at him that this was his fault. Quote, they know better, he told Coppins of his far-right colleagues. Granting that Hawley was one of the smartest people in the Senate, if not the smartest, Romney speculated that the Missouri lawmaker had made a calculation that ended up putting politics above the interests of liberal democracy and the Constitution. Having lost the stomach for collaborating with his more Machiavellian counterparts, Romney at one point over the last 2 years outright told Coppins that he doubted he would ever work with Josh Hawley on anything. Last year, Vance similarly stoked Romney's ire. Initially a fan of Vance's memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, Romney turned on Vance after his MAGA makeover, as Coppins put it. Watching Vance rail against Biden and the woke left on the campaign trail, Romney said he wanted to grab the younger man and scream in his face that debasing himself like this wasn't worth it. Quote, it's not like you're going to be famous and powerful because you became a United States Senator, Romney said. It's like, really? You sell yourself so cheap? The particular seething hatred for Josh Hawley and J.D. Vance is that he knows, as a matter of fact, they don't buy the nonsense they spew, that it's all political posturing, that it's all finger in the wind, careerist ambitions trying to climb the ladder, and they would tickle Donald Trump's taint with their tongue to get a 1 percentage point advantage or movement in a positive direction for their career. And on that, he is 100% correct. There's another part where Romney comes out and says, It's just the reality at this late date that my party does not believe in the Constitution. Many in my party do not believe in the Constitution. And on that, I say, well, absolutely, because Trump came out recently and said, I want to suspend the Constitution to put me back in power. You know, and by the way, let's be clear, this isn't unique to the Trump era. It's just worse in the Trump era, because we all know George W. Bush and Dick Cheney didn't believe in the Constitution. We all know that they suspended habeas corpus and did torture and did, extrajudicial killings and locked people up without due process. So, like, there's always been a strain of this on the right. It's just now it's even more naked and obvious under the Trump era because he's so cartoonish and so buffoonish. And you have these people who, like Ivy League educated, intelligent people making a choice to cuck themselves. And by the way, like Hawley came out and responded to Mitt Romney and tried to be like pithy. And it's like, you jackass, you were just unmasked. Everybody knows what you are. Everybody knows you don't buy into this Trump garbage. But you do it for narcissistic careerist ambitions, and it's obvious. Now, this part's interesting. Romney sees more in common with Joe Manchin than he does with other Republicans at this point. Now, what is Joe Manchin? We all know. He's the quintessential corporate centrist. And that fairly describes Mitt Romney as well. And so, for those of you who don't know, there was a time during the Trump era, which I think perfectly sums up Joe Manchin. He literally had a 50% vote with Democrat and 50% vote with Republican record. He was exactly 50-50 in terms of his voting record. And Romney looks at that and he thinks, I'm more with this guy. So he approached Manchin about forming a new political party. But interestingly enough, one of the other things we learned is seeing that Trump is very likely to be the nominee on the Republican side, seeing Biden is very likely to be the nominee on the Democratic side, Mitt Romney looked at that and reevaluated and basically said, like, we absolutely should not run a centrist third-party candidate this time around because that would just turn the election over to Trump. And I don't want to do that. So interesting. So ideologically, he actually believes in corporate centrism, which makes sense. I mean, that's Mitt Romney to a T, right? Which I despise and disagree with, etc., all those things. But I find it amazing that he had the wherewithal to realize, like, we're not going to turn the election over to Trump again for a vanity project that's not going to work. Really, really interesting stuff. They go on to explain how Romney was largely friendless. He would watch Ted Lasso alone at night in his $2.4 million townhouse. And apparently he's also obsessed with his own death. And he's had, like, dreams that he fears are, like, premonitions or whatever. But anyway, look, I feel like, on the one hand, the biggest point here is obvious, but also on the other hand, this should be a giant deal. That all these Republicans say one thing privately, behind the scenes, they don't believe what they're saying. They are totally different when the cameras aren't on. And that means nobody should trust these people. It reminds me of, the Tucker Carlson Dominion lawsuit, where we got all these internal correspondence, these emails and these text messages. And Tucker was saying, I hate Trump. I despise Trump. I can't wait to not have to talk about him anymore. Nothing positive has come out of the Trump era at all. I despise him with a burning passion. And then publicly, he's a little bitch boy and a little sycophant. And he's just wave riding, right? And it's the same thing with these Republican senators. None of them have an ounce of principle or backbone. And when it takes Mitt Romney to be the person who's, like, somewhat brave about this, God, that's so pathetic. That's so pathetic, because Mitt Romney ain't no hero, dog. He's not. He's a corporate centrist. He's an institutionalist through and through. His politics and my politics are very, very, very different. But he really is ripping the mask off of this nonsense. He's really exposing what's going on behind the scenes. And it's just what we expected. That all these people who suck off Trump and act like, well, maybe the election was stolen. None of them believe it. None of them. So grow a pair. For the love of God, grow a pair. Stand up. They could have ousted him, put the knife in his back, and twisted it a while ago, metaphorically speaking, of course, and they didn't do it. After January 6th, they could have got through Congress this idea that if you try an insurrection, you can't hold elected office again. They could have done it. They didn't do it. They could have voted for impeachment, any of the impeachment. They didn't do it, right? They could be out there saying, hey, Jack Smith is correct. These charges are legit. They're not doing it. And so even though they're quietly wishing that Trump goes away and that these charges work, but none of them will dare to say it. None of them will say it. So sad, so pathetic, such losers, and now you can see through it. All right, guys, that's the show. I love y'all very much, as always. Thank you for listening to me babble. It's my job. It's what I do. Everybody do me a big favor. Click that like button. Click that subscribe button. Click that bell icon so you get a notification every single time a video drops. Remember, I've never had a conversation with an advertiser. I would deeply appreciate your support. You can support the show on Patreon. Link is below in the video description box. You could also support Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. That link is below as well. Or you could tip through YouTube. There's a thanks button below. You guys help build this channel from the ground up. Be nothing without y'all. And that's all I got for you. I love you all, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Peace. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.